Okay, welcome back to another episode of Divine Ethereal Beings. Today, we are going to talk a bit more about the self-care. And we just feel like this is a really important time with all the things going on. Today, technically, is October 1st, 2024. But we are entering into a time of massive chaotic energy starting to take place. It feels like there's a lot going on here in the world in general. And I feel as though, like the teams and the collectives have definitely been hinting a lot at some self-care the last few months, and it's starting to make sense why, just because it just feels like our roller coaster is just about to take off here when it comes to a massive amount of energy that is going on in our planet as a collective as well. So this isn't even just individually, you guys, this is happening on the collective. And as much as we might feel as though we're quite good at it for ourselves and keeping our own energy in a state of being, I've even just had an experience that this is getting harder to do right now just because of where we're at and what's happening. So we want to talk a little more about self-care today.
Yeah. And, it's like, how do we even recognize we need to do the self-care? What's going on in your world personally? Like you're hitting on what's happening, collectively and knowing you're not alone. But I think it's good to also talk about how it's showing up individually for us to be aware of as well. So I definitely have a lot of transitions happening in my life that aren't even mine with everybody kind of around me. And so, which makes my self-care even more important, right? Like, so whether it's for you or what's happening around you and your immediate family, that need for, well, grounding, being in your body, being present, right, is huge. Taking those moments to slow down, take a breath, take a pause, just slow down, whatever that looks like for you. I think that that's part of that chaos. If you notice that you're getting caught up and like, there's just stuff to do. There's always something going on. There's always, again, like, it's not even my stuff. Like, I can't get my stuff done because it's everybody around me. Stuff is coming up and got to do it. And that's fine. But it has forced me to realize like, wow, we all just need to take a moment and pause. And so that's going to look different for your kids, what age your kids are. Maybe your younger kids are going to need more play, more time outside, right? More alone time in their room with their toys. You have teenagers, maybe it looks like game time. Let them do the thing that they need to do, for sure. And then as adults, right? Whatever that is for you. So, and it's not so much a forcing, but what you need to do for self-care. And it's like just committing to yourself to do it, right? Taking the
It's
walk.
hard to always know, though, I think, what we need for ourselves, because especially you want to give to your family, you want to take care of everybody else around you. And I've had conversations where people, I'm like, well, what do you like to do for yourself? And they like have no answer because they don't even really know. And in those moments, is like, it's okay not to know, but that's also where maybe you need to see for yourself, like what do you, or talk to yourself or talk to your body and find out what you actually do need in that moment, whether it be, just a quiet moment to yourself, or maybe your body's hurting and you want to go get a massage or doing something like that. I think a lot of people have this notion of self-care of always it being like going to get, a spa day, or I'll just take a day to myself and I'll just rest and that's enough. And it's, sure, maybe at some points it is, but self-care is actually a daily practice that should be put in place for all of us. Because if you don't do it on a daily, then you will get to a point where you're feeling like, I just need out of here. I just need on a vacation. Like, I just feel like everything is just coming down on me. And that's not where you want to get to either, because that's actually not what this life is about. And I think the notions that have been given to us about what we should look like, as a mom with a family, or even if you're a business owner and you've got things that you want to do and create and all the stuff, like it just, there's been so many pictures and stories put in place, I think, for us to say that this is how it's done, right or wrong. And there isn't a right or wrong when it comes to each individual person. So even for, myself, I don't have a family. I have a business that I want to do different things in, sure. And there are times where I just have to make sure, if I feel frustrated, I know that's a sign for me to say, like, I'm getting too much and too involved in something and I haven't done enough taking care and checking in with my own self. So frustration for me is kind of like frustration and anger, for the most part, are really big ones for me to recognize. Like if that is showing up for me, then I do realize, okay, maybe I need to take a pause for myself, find out what I actually need in that moment, A lot of the time it's just to stop what I'm doing and just to go enjoy myself, take a walk, whatever that looks like in that moment. Or sometimes it is to go, maybe do energy work, or maybe it's to meditate, maybe it's to do these other pieces that I know help me. But this is the thing, you all have to figure out what tools help you, because not everybody's tools are going to help each other in every exact way. So,
Yeah, exactly. I have a friend of mine who, is in her 40s and has decided to ride bikes again, right? And it's like, go play. Tune into, for her, this was about tuning into the last time that she really felt that free and that play and that laughter and lightness, and it was riding bikes. So this is how she's tuning back into that energy, riding bikes at 50 or whatever age she is. And so, yeah, what is it for you, and what brings in the laughter and play? Maybe it's dancing around your house, right? Or and it gets to be different all the time. Maybe it's coloring, maybe it's watching a comedy, maybe it's cooking, right? Like there is no right or wrong way to do it. And for me, it's overwhelm and frustration for sure. So,
yeah, I
yeah.
think overwhelm is probably universal, probably for a lot of us, as people. If that overwhelm is showing up, that's probably something in you saying that, the energy is chaos and it needs to just take a pause so you can actually start to see clearly, about what next steps actually have to be done compared to just looking at the to-do list and being like, oh my God, all of it needs to get done. So, it's, that's even self-care in itself, right? Is looking and figuring out, okay, what actually needs to be done, and not forcing yourself to go beyond just because the to-do list is sitting on the counter. And I think that's also something that people have brought up to me before, and being like, well, I can't just have a whole day to myself. It just doesn't always work like that. Okay, well, that's fine, but why don't you only do the things that are absolutely necessary that day, instead of feeling like, yeah, you're just going to tackle the whole list? Because there's always going to be another list. You're always going to create another one for yourself. It never seems to really end when it comes to lists. So just pick what actually needs to be done. Just get those few things done, and then allow yourself to have some time. And I know, even for myself, to read a book, like a good fiction book for me, with, something that is completely off world or not from in here, gets me into a story, gets me into a different state of being, that I've always enjoyed ever since I was a child. I always loved reading, right? So it's, again, like you said, bringing yourself back to the things that bring you a little bit of joy and happiness, or feeling really creative. Sometimes people don't have enough of that in your daily life. So getting creative, like coloring or creating some kind of art, or doing arts and crafts type of stuff, or hobby stuff, that's always, there's a reason why people say you should have a hobby, because otherwise what else are you going to do, right? Even if that hobby is watching your favorite comedy show, for an hour or so before your evening ends, right? It's just to bring your vibration up to a place that feels better in your body again. And the reason why, again, we wanted to talk about this was because of the chaos that is going to, has started ensuing here on our planet. Yes, but coming up to some really intense times, that a lot of this is just going to feel even more, you know, who, like, just, you thought there was a lot going on, the wave hit you hard before, it's just going to continue. So, I mean, self-care and doing the little things for ourselves to help keep ourselves feeling better will make it easier to ride this wave as it starts to, go and then come down eventually. But it's not going to be a super fast wave, let's just put it that way. It's been building for quite some time. So,
Well, and I just want to mention one thing here without going all the way down the rabbit hole on this. However, like as you're navigating through this, remember it's what you think about what is happening around you, what you think about yourself. Like if you can pay attention to the thoughts going on, that's what actually is creating those emotions of overwhelm and frustration. That's part of it anyway. So again, I don't want to dive down that rabbit hole, but just know that that is part of it and it's a whole thing of its own. And so there are so many ways out there to, help yourself. And so that brings us back to the point of like really trusting yourself, of following what makes you excited, what makes lights you up. Like that's part of the self-care as well. Whatever you're learning, if you're a learner, go learn a new modality, go learn something new, learn a new subject. Like that all gets to be part of self-care too.
absolutely, if it brings you a type of joy, then it is definitely a part of your routine of being able to raise your vibration. And really, that's what's coming down to. We're trying to raise our vibration, so we're not sitting in a space of a heavier space where things are moving slowly, where again, if we are focusing on our physical world, that's all we're really going to see. We're just going to see the dense physical matter of our world instead of more of the energetics. And we all know it all strives from the energetics first. So if you're now focusing more on the energetics or how you're feeling, and you're feeling better and you're happier, or you're, in creative mode and you're having a good time, you're naturally going to now be focusing more on those energetics, which then again makes your external world also feel a lot less dense, a lot less stressful to certain degrees. So it's a helpful route and tool for all of us, but it's also going to be really important that we keep doing this for the next little while, especially up into the end of the year and beginning of next year here, because it is coming up into winter here in Canada as well, where a lot of us like go into hermit mode because not many of us really enjoy being out in the cold. And again, it's a really great time to, yes, self-reflect, figure out what's working for you, what's not. But again, even in that process, we can become overwhelmed, because if we feel like, oh my God, I'm not where I want to be, or all these things, I thought I would be here or there, and it just hasn't happened the way I thought it was going to happen. And all this stuff kind of starts to pile back up, and so that self-reflection even can cause a lot of chaos in ourselves, because we start to realize, holy shit, an entire year is almost gone and done again already, and I'm just not where I thought I was going to be.
Those
So
thoughts,
having
those thoughts.
exactly, exactly that, right? And that those thoughts alone, like you said. And I mean, honestly, I think what they're bringing back to me is, I believe we've done a couple podcast episodes that kind of touch a bit more on that. One of them is self-awareness. So you can go back through some of our episodes if you haven't listened to them, and find which ones kind of draw you towards more, if you're curious more about how those thoughts work for us in creating our own reality. So again, though, the amount of guilt I find a lot of people have as well when they want to do something for themselves, or feel like they do want to take a little bit of time and enjoy something that they like doing, the immense amount of guilt that seems to hit so many people for that as well, I think is also something I kind of want to talk about, just because it seems to be like the overhanging elephant in the room that nobody really wants to address, you know?
Yeah, we can talk about that. And then they also keep really bringing in touching on gratitude and bringing that focus back to gratitude. So I
I
don't know
think
which,
gratitude is a great way to fight the guilt.
right. So I'll let you kind of navigate into
Ye
those too.
Okay. So I think the guilt often comes from, again, the society and the beliefs and the culture maybe that you've grown up in. And again, yes, of course, it's gonna be different across the world, but for the most part, between Canada and the United States, I would say our cultures are pretty similar. And so a lot of us have grown up in this fact of, well, if you don't get everything you were supposed to get done, then why would you take time for yourself? Or that seems selfish to do something that you would like to do when there's other things that could be done, or other people that need to be tended to. And so it's always been given to us as like this notion that, taking care of ourselves or taking time for ourselves is not something to be immensely proud of or talk about or be okay with. You can for a little bit of time, but God forbid if you go over that, it just feels like there's always a judgment behind doing these things. And so the immense amount of guilt that can sometimes hit people, I find a lot of the times either we stop doing it and we go on to doing something else that we think we should be doing again. It is a process. It definitely is not usually something someone can just do and be okay with after, a certain amount of time. So gratitude, though, I think plays really well into that, because gratitude kind of counteracts that guilt, because they're very different frequencies. And I think talking a little bit about gratitude, we should talk a little bit about like the false gratitude like the aspect that somewhat comes with that as well, about people being like, well, you should just be grateful that you have this or that and this and that. And that just gives it such a terrible undertone of like, again, it just doesn't feel good.
Yeah, and it's not about you should be grateful for this or that or the other. The key when we say tuning into gratitude, what it is take yourself back to a time that you've already felt, like truly felt, not, oh, I'm grateful for. When most people have had an experience of someone saying thank you to them where they actually felt the energy of that person's gratitude, saying thank you. When you help someone out who was truly in a bind, right? Like you can feel the difference. And, or, for whatever, right? Everybody can tune into, hopefully, hey, and sometimes you might need help, and it's okay to ask a friend, like, hey, help me retune into a time when I was accessing gratitude. And you just need one memory, because your brain and your body don't know the difference between imagination and reality. So if you can recall and take yourself back to that moment of gratitude and feel it, that's very, very real to your brain and your body. And that's where we're talking about counteracting the frequency of the guilt.
Yeah, exactly. I think the other really good one is they just showed me in my mind, okay, if you're having trouble finding gratitude, find a moment in time that you had laughed so hard you felt like you were going to pee your pants or you were going to fall off your chair. Because the gratitude that you have behind that kind of reaction or that situation is usually immense for a lot of us, right? A lot of us want to talk about, oh, yeah, remember that time we laughed so hard and all this stuff. And like it just instantly brings up this immense amount of gratitude for even having that kind of interaction or having that kind of memory. So if you're, having a struggling to find one, find someone, and I guarantee you we've all been there at some point in our life, laughing so hard we're crying and can't breathe and all the things, even if it seems like the most ridiculous moment or you can't remember why you were laughing that hard. Tuning back again into that feeling of it though will again help you get into a state of being that is of a higher frequency of more energy than it is physicality. And I think guilt comes from the physical world. It doesn't come from energy. It's that space to say that it's coming from something we've created in ourselves. So again, to use the gratitude in a way that works well for if you feel like you can't get out of emotion or feeling like this or that or unpreferred emotion or state of being, by using that gratitude you will easily be able to, you might have to work at it a little bit because your brain might try and fight you a little bit on it at first, but the more you do it and the more you give into that feeling, the more you're going to find it super easy to actually start flipping more towards that feeling and being able to, no matter what is going on in your day, no matter what is going on in your life, challenging or not, you'll be able to find a little bit of space within all of that by using the gratitude and the feeling of it.
Yeah, and I really like that other example of that laughter, bringing in those moments of that where, like, whatever it is, maybe it's a moment that you did something that you laughed at yourself later about, right? Like, but it's it's those times when, like, you just couldn't control the laughter, right? Like, it's not the setup times. It's, and then, yeah, just allow yourself to be in that, because it's, again, it's just okay,
You
right?
deserve it. You do
Yeah,
deserve it. As much as you might feel like you don't, you fucking deserve it because we all do. And that's the thing is finding your inner power. I think a part of that is a big piece of this is the self-care is not just about loving yourself. I feel like there's such a clash a little bit in that notion as well, because it's also been given to say, this is what it looks like, right? And that's just not true either. So I think by using the perception and changing your own belief around all of that will help. And by using these pieces of gratitude and allowing that to be a part of your inner power and just defining on who you are here as a divine self instead of just as a human being will help you integrate in your human experience better as well, because you won't feel so inclined to follow the box anymore that, consistently is trying to push a lot of people.
yeah, I'm just getting this, like, concept or this way of bringing it in around, like, yeah, self-care is your ability to own your frequency.
Exactly. And be able to change that when you wish.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, to be in control of your own vibration.
Yeah. And that in itself is so powerful because if you can feel as though you're more in control of yourself in that way, you now have more control of what your reality is perceived as, no matter if you feel as though you can control that situation or not. But now your response changes, which means your entire reality will change along with that. And so it does get to be very powerful. And I think for the most part, I feel like that's part of the reason why it's been suppressed in certain ways, because God forbid if we all find our power within ourselves, what kind of world we would actually be living in.
This is our free will. This is our choice. This is where you have choice and free will, is with your ability to own your own vibration. Really, that's the bottom line.
Exactly. And we always say you can't control your, situations and other people outside of you in this world, but the only thing you can control is your response to the rest of it in front of you. And I think this is one of those ways that just makes it a lot easier to be able to respond. And I think, again, coming around to why we wanted to do this, it just feels so important as we move through this next piece and into the end of the year here to be able to have that inner power and knowing of taking care of you, but now you have more of a place to stand, because grounding in general, as the collectives mentioned is actually starting to change a bit because of our frequencies on Earth as well. So they think coming back to, maybe you're not that person that's like, yeah, I like to do these things for myself, and you have a good idea, or maybe you do like to meditate, maybe you do like these things, but all of a sudden you're kind of realizing that this experience of how that's working is changing a little for you, and that's okay as well. It's never going to stay the same, because again, if we stay the same, we're not actually expanding and growing the way that our soul is asking to be expanding and growing, which also entails, connecting with our divine self and higher self in those states of being. So grounding in itself is actually changing as well. I've had some people say, I just don't feel quite as like solid and heavy in my feet anymore. I'm like, well, that's good. And they're like, no, it's not, because they're just so used to having that experience when we are not. So again, being able to surrender into the portions that are feeling like they're changing, but allow them to change for the better, because it's likely going to help you out in a different way anyway, rather than now all of a sudden fighting with yourself because it doesn't feel the same way or it wasn't working the same way. I used to get a lot out of doing art. Now I just don't feel the same way about art. That's okay. Go and find something else you're drawn to. You don't have to keep repeating the same things just because they've worked in the past. If you know that they've worked in the past, you do them again, they don't feel like they're working, then try something different. Maybe it's totally meant to bring you to something even more powerful that could help you in different ways. So allowing that piece of, yes, you do have the control to choose, but if you feel like you're not getting the same thing from it, go and try something different.
Yeah.
I don't think I have a whole lot more to add on this one.
I don't either.
I think we're going to keep this one nice and short and sweet. And again, even if maybe self care is not new to you, hopefully, maybe the energy we were able to create in a container here that has no judgment, that we try very hard to get across to everyone to see just different perspective. And hopefully, maybe you were able to receive something from this and help yourself. And I say, now that you've heard this, some point today, I wish for you to go and take a little time for yourself and do something you enjoy. And in the meantime, we will catch you on the next one.